Hey guys, welcome to the video Active Directory Integrated Zones. Myself Himanshu Rana and I'll be your instructor in this video. So let's get started. So for configuring AD integrated type zone, I need to install Active Directory on the DNS server. Okay, so for configuring Active Directory on this DNS server, go to the server manager, add roles and features, click next, role based and feature based installation, next. Active Directory domain service, click on that. Next, leave it as it is, click next. Okay, restart the destination server automatically if required, and it will restart the server after installing the Active Directory. So I'm selecting this option, but it depends on you whether you want it to be automatically restarted or you have to manually restart it. Click install. So this will install the Active Directory binaries, and then it will ask for DC promo configuration. So I'm pausing the video for the moment and I will start once the installation will be finished. Okay, binaries are installed. Now promote the server to a domain controller. So it will provide you the configuration boxes. So you have to configure the domain controller. So add a domain controller to an existing domain. I don't have any existing domain yet. So add a new domain to an existing forest. No, I don't have any existing forest. Add a new forest. So this will create a new forest for me. And the domain name would be contoso.com. So now a new forest, a new domain will be created as I told you. So the DNS is already installed and it will make this server as a global catalog server because this is the first server in the domain. Directory server restore mode password. So this is the password which you have to provide when you will be logging into the directory server restore mode in order to do any maintenance task in the Active Directory. Okay, click next. A delegation for this DNS server cannot be created because the authority parent zone cannot be found. Okay, so as the DNS is already installed, we will create the Active Directory zone later manually. Verify the NetBIOS name assigned to this domain. So it will check the NetBIOS name of the domain, which is just contoso without .com in the whole network to make sure there is no conflict. So this is where the Active Directory database will be installed. So you can review the configuration, and it is verifying the prerequisites to install the domain controller. So it will automatically pop up any error or information or warning if it found any anomalies. Okay, all prerequisites checks are passed and you can install the domain controller on this server. However, there are some warnings which you can look out and if necessary can resolve them. I'm going with the installation of the domain controller. Okay, it will take certain time to configure this domain controller. By that time I'm pausing this video and I'll be back when the configuration will be done. Okay, the Active Directory is installed and the server is restarted. So you can find Active Directory by clicking the search and Active Directory. So you can find Active Directory tools. So Active Directory users in computer have your domain and all the objects inside the domain. So there will be Active Directory services registered in the services console, which you can find by typing services.msc in the run, and these are the Active Directory services which are installed. Okay, now let's take a look at the DNS. Active Directory is heavily depend on DNS for its function. So let's take a look at the DNS. Okay, so this is the domain name and the zone configure which we configured already, which is a primary zone. Now let's change this primary zone from a standard type zone to Active Directory integrated type. So now you can see that the option is now available. So now I'm configuring primary zone from a standard type zone to primary zone AD integrated type zone. Click OK. Yes. Apply and OK. Okay, Active Directory also uses another zone to store its SRV record, and we have to create that zone manually, then force Active Directory to automatically create or register its SRV record into this zone. So right click and new zone. This will be also primary zone AD integrated type. Now when you select AD integrated type zone, so you will be provided with the Active Directory zone replication scope option, because Active Directory replication is a multi-master replication model where all Active Directory servers are master on its own. So you must be having multiple read and write copies of the database. So any domain controller can make changes in the database and can replicate those changes to other domain controllers. So this option is asking you the scope of the replication. So the zone data will be replicated by default to all DNS server running on domain controller in this domain contoso.com. You can select the other option if you want to replicate the zone data to all domain controllers running DNS server in the forest contoso.com. So if you select this option, so all the domain controller which are inside the forest, means the domain controller from another domain as well, so they will be receiving the replication of this data from the DNS server. Or you can select this option to all domain controller in this domain, so which is Windows 2000 compatible. So it means if you have any Windows Server 2000 running as a domain controller and it doesn't have a DNS server installed on it, but you want that the data must be replicated to that server as well, so you can select this option. But for now I'm going to select the option to replicate the zone data to all DNS server running Active Directory in the domain contoso.com. Click next. The zone name will be msdcs.contoso.com. Okay, dynamic update. Now the default option in the standard type zone was do not allow dynamic update, while in the AD integrated type zone you have this new feature available where you can have the secure dynamic update, and it is by default selected. So I'll explain all these things in next session. So for now I'm selecting the default secure dynamic update are allowed. Click next. Finish. Okay, so here's the zone msdcs.contoso.com and contoso.com. So now Active Directory will use these zones to register its SRV records. So for that, what I have to do, I have to restart the net logon service on this domain controller, and before that I need to check something in the network properties of the domain controller. In the TCP IPv4, go to properties, go to advanced DNS, and make sure this checkbox is enabled. Register these connections addresses in DNS. Okay. Now restart the net logon service on the domain controller. Net stop net logon. Net start net logon. So either you can use the command line or you can use the services console to restart the netlogon service. Okay, now let's check the DNS server. Here we go. All the records are registered. So these records are registered automatically by the Active Directory services. So you can see that these are the SRV record, which are locating the LDAP services provided by the domain controller. So the domain controller provide LDAP services, Kerberos services, global catalog. For that, the record is created over here. So this is for the global catalog, and the SRV record is having a particular format. Means if any client will look for the record gc underscore msdcs.contoso.com, so it will locate the host record associated with this SRV record, which is offering the global catalog service on this port number. So global catalog uses port number 3268, and this is the weight and priority of the record. So actually, if you're having multiple record which are serving the same service, so you can adjust the priority by configuring the priority tab. So 0 is the highest priority. So if you have any other record and you want that the client computer should not query that domain controller first, so you can change the priority other than the 0. I'm going to delete this stub zone. It is no longer needed. So now you have two zones for Active Directory servers, and they are both means read and write, and the primary AD integrated type zone. Okay, now as I told you, you can have, when you have Active Directory servers running on a DNS server, you can have multiple read and write copy of that same zone. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna install another Active Directory server in the same domain on HRDNS01, and I'm gonna install the Active Directory on this server similarly like I did for HRDC01. So as this activity will take time, I'm pausing the video and we'll be back when this activity will be finished. Okay, the binaries are installed. Now I'm gonna add a domain controller to an existing domain, because now I have the forest and the domain. So I want to add this domain controller in the existing contoso.com domain. So the domain name is contoso.com, and it's asking me the domain admin credentials. So okay, I have to first change my DNS configuration so that it will be able to query the domain information on the HRDC01 DNS server. So in the TCP IPv4 properties, I am gonna enter the IP address of HRDC01 so that all the DNS queries will be forwarded to that DNS server. Okay, provide the credential of the domain admin. Select the domain and click next. So you must make sure that the domain name must be resolvable to the IP address of the domain controller. Okay, so configure the DNS, and the DNS is already installed, so this is the option which is not highlighted, and the global catalog. So you can select to not install the domain controller, the global catalog, or if you want to make this domain controller as a global catalog as well, so select this option. DSRM password. Click next. Alright, so you have the option to to install the domain controller by using any backup media. No, I want to replicate it from any domain controller, or you can select the particular domain controller. So this is I want to do. This is the where the activated database will be stored. Okay, you can review the selections and now click next. It will run all prerequisite checks to check whether this machine can be a domain controller. So all prerequisite checks are passed successfully, although there are some warning which you can look and can sort it out if necessary. Now click install and install the domain controller. So it will now configure all the changes on this server, and will then take a reboot of the server. So by the time I'm gonna pause this video, and we'll be back when the server will be restarted. Okay, so now the domain controller is restarted, and it's now a functional domain controller. You can see the domain is contoso.com and the computer name is hrdns01, and you can find the Active Directory tools in the search box. So now we have two domain controllers in a domain, contoso.com. So let's see the DNS server on this domain controller. Okay, so here's the DNS console, and you can see that these two zones are automatically replicated from the master DNS server to this DNS server. So now both of the DNS server are hosting the same zone, and both are having read and write copy of the zone data. I'm gonna create a host record in the contoso.com, name test.contoso.com, which maps to the IP address 10.32.0.6, and add host. Okay, now you will see that this record which I created on the HRDNS01 will be replicated to HRDC01. Okay, so here is the resource record which is replicated to this zone. Sometime if it won't pop up automatically, just restart the DNS service on this DNS server, and it will. Sometime it takes time to replicate the resource records. So if you want to replicate it manually, just restart the DNS service. So this is how Active Directory integrated type zone works, and now the DNS zone data is stored inside the Active Directory database, and it is using Active Directory multi-master replication model for replicating the DNS zone data. And the benefit of it is that you can write the DNS zone data on any DNS server. So you have multiple read and write copies in the domain. Okay, now let's take a look at the reverse lookup zone. And this zone is used for mapping the IP address to the host name. So you have to create a zone in reverse lookup zone first. So right click reverse lookup zone, create new zone. So primary zone stored in the Active Directory. Next, to all DNS server running on domain controller in this domain contoso.com, leave it the default. Okay, so for which IP version you want to create the zone, IPv4 or IPv6? I'm using IPv4, so I'll go for IPv4. Network ID. So this is the network ID for which you want to create the zone, and this network ID is the subnet for which you want to create the zone. So my subnet is in 10.32.0. So it will create a zone name in the reverse order 0.32.10.inaddr.arpa. So this is the default naming convention. So click next, give the default, and finish. Okay, so now this zone will host all the resource records which are inside this subnet. So I'm gonna create a pointer record which will be having IP address of 6, that is the HRDNS01. The host name will be, you can browse the host name, HRDNS01. Okay, so the IP address will be mapped to the HRDNS01 host name. Alright, now let's make a reverse lookup query. I'm just typing the IP address 10.32.0.6 and let's see if it written with the host name. Okay, so now it made the query to the reverse lookup zone to look for the IP associated with the host name. As I created this zone in the HRDC01 and it is an Active Directory integrated type zone, so this zone also must get created in the another DNS server. Restart the DNS service. Okay, so you can see that the zone is automatically now created because this DNS server is also a domain controller, and now this domain controller is replicating with the HRDC01 and it has the zone data. So you can check the replication of these two domain controller by using the command repadmin/showrep. So you can see that domain DNS zone and forest DNS zone, these are the two application directory partitions, default application directory partitions for storing the zone data are replicated and was successful. So I'm running command on the HRDNS01, so you can see the replication is from HRDC01. Okay, now you understand how Active Directory integrated type zone works. Okay, now let's see one more thing. While creating a new zone, I told you that only two zones can be AD integrated type zone. The primary zone can be standard as well as AD integrated type zone, while the stub zone also can be standard and AD integrated type zone. If you click on secondary zone, you will see that this option is not highlighted because secondary zone cannot be a AD integrated type zone and it can always be standard type zone. So now you understand how AD integrated type zone works and how forward and reverse lookup zone works. So thank you for watching the video. If you like the video, so you can grab the whole course Mastering DNS on Windows Server 2012 R2 at this link. And if you would like to hear about more upcoming courses and the discount, so do email me at himanshu.rana@outlook.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at himanshu.rana pro.